Allie Buckman with the Potomac Bead Company, and today I got the pleasure of working with some Rivolis for you, making this Windows of the World pendant or beaded bead, depending on kind of what you want to do with it. You can take this idea and make it your own and make it into whatever you like. I have two different versions here, actually using the same materials, just one uses a little bit less than the other. You can kind of add some tassels at the bottom, make it a pendant, make it a little bit of a heavier earring, or even string a bunch of them together to make a really outstanding necklace or bracelet combination. If you need any of the materials for this Windows of the World necklace, you can go to the left-hand side here while I'm explaining the different materials that are used. We'll do little pop-ups for you that show the links so you can purchase at PotomacBeads.com from me any of the materials that you may need that are used here in this video. If you don't see those little links on the side, it may be because of the device that you're using. If you go below the video to the description, which depending on the device again might be right at the bottom, or you might have to look a little bit further, there's a little show more or a down arrow to get more details about the video. In those details in the description on the video, we'll have links to the products as well. So when you're looking for the materials for the Windows of the World, the main focus is going to be the 10mm Potomac Crystal Rivoli. The 10mm Potomac Crystal Rivoli that you're using, you're going to need 6 of them. So whether or not you want to do a color combo or all one color, that's kind of up to you. For the one that we're doing together, I'm going to be using an array of the different kind of rainbow colors, from the metallic pomegranate to violet to ice, that peridot and that citrine, and then the carnelian as well. So I have kind of all of my different colors. Here I stayed with kind of the more pink and purple colors. And then when I did the larger version here, I went with the magic wine color. So I used all the same color of my Rivolis. Again, they are a 10mm Rivoli, and they're the Potomac Crystal Rivolis, and you will need 6 of them. It doesn't matter whether or not you want to do it a little bit bigger or the smaller version, the tighter version. Both of those use the same size. If you want to, you can also watch this video, get the technique, and then you could build an even bigger version if you want with some larger of the Rivolis as well. Other than the 6 Rivolis, we are going to be using in our design, I have 2 4mm Potomac Crystal rounds sitting there. Those I'm just going to use as I show you how to kind of coil through and put some wire through the ends. To form our base for this pendant, we're going to be using some Delica beads, and we're using Delicas in 11/0 and Miyuki seed beads in 15/0. For the colors that I've chosen, in the original design, I used the Duracoat Galvanized silver in the middle in the Duracoat in the Delica color. On the outside, I used the Crystal Labrador in the 15/0, which the 15/0 is a Miyuki seed bead that is coated in the Czech Republic. So it's a cooperative color that is a nice bright silver. I'm going to be using that same nice bright silver, that Crystal Labrador, in the 15/0 as well as we're working together. To keep track of what is the Delica versus the 15/0, I'm going to be using the Delica in a gold color. It's the Duracoat Galvanized Gold in the Delica. I used that same Delica in this larger version here. And then I used the Duracoat Galvanized Champagne in the 15/0s, depending on which colors you kind of want to carry along. So I'm going to be using the 2 different colors in the videos of the silver 15 and the gold Delica 11 to make it easier for you guys to keep track of what I'm doing. To string the whole thing together, I have some 0.006 wildfire beading thread, and I'll be using the green color. I'll be using that with 1 size 12 needle. The 12s that I like are the Pony brand or the Lance needles. You can kind of use what you want. I like the fact that they bend a little bit, but they don't snap on me. So depending on what your needle preference is, you're going to need 1 size 12 needle. It's always a good idea to have another needle on hand, just in case you do need to add thread or have another one available. Because I am working with thread, I have my thread zap here. This is the thread zap 2. You can do the thread zap ultra, the cord cutter, whatever's the one that you have, it will work just fine. I like to use them to get the thread off my spool and then also to burn down the little thread edges. If you want to have a needle nose pliers, then you can kind of pinch down on that little fused thread end, and that'll make it easier for you to thread your needle. You do want a nice workable surface in order to make you faster and more efficient beader to pick up those beads, whether or not you're working on a bead mat or a bead on it board and have the opportunity to kind of move around. A nice uncluttered workable surface is always a good idea. To create this into a pendant, I do have sitting here some 24 gauge gold filled wire. Here I use the 24 gauge artistic silver wire. And I have some chain sitting here. This is an Italian silver Rollo chain, electric coated, that I'll be using to put on the ends and show you how to complete and do a little bit of wire working at the end to make this like the original design. This one here, I think I'm actually going to be hanging down a tassel and making it kind of a more modern look. If you do want to follow along, even doing the wire working, you are going to need a couple tools handy. You want a round nose pliers and a wire cutters in addition to your needle nose pliers. To get started, we're not going to be thinking about the wire or the chain at all. We're even going to push our crystals to the side, and we're just going to be worrying right now about our Delicas and our 15-0 seed beads. I'm going to use about 4 feet of beading thread, burn the thread off the spool, thread my size 12 needle, and have little piles to go ready of each of those 2 seed beads. So the first thing we're going to be doing is creating our base. You can see here in the larger version, those Delicas kind of running straight along the middle. Those are going to be the base, which is going to be a box that we create with the Delica beads. If you want to have the larger version of the pendant, your count is going to be 6 Delica beads long. If you want to do the smaller version, you're going to do 5 Delica beads long. So you have the bigger version with 6 that you can see a little bit more of the Rivolis there on the side, and you do see the Delicas. If you want to see very little of the Delicas and you want the crystals to be closer, you're going to do 5 as your count. To make it easier to see what is going on, I'm going to be doing the bigger version as we work along here. I'll describe at each step the different counts that you would use to make the version that's a little bit tighter versus the version that's a little bit bigger. So to start out, again, the numbers are going to be either 6 or 5. What I mean by that is that we are going to create, using right angle weave, a box with 6 long and tall, so it's going to be a cube of my Delica beads. I have my needle on my thread, and I'm just going to hold about 2 inches up from the base of the thread. I'm going to put on 6 of my Delicas, and that is going to be one side of a square that I'll be making. Because I'm making a square, I need 3 more sets of 6. There's one more, that's 12. So you're going to need 24 altogether. There's my next 6. And there's my final 6. Pushing the beads then down to the bottom here. I'm going to take the 3 inches of thread at the end and simply tie those beads into a knot. Once I have the knot made, I'll pull that close to the project, making sure that none of my beads are incorporated into my knot. If they are, just kind of push them out of the way. If we give a nice tight pull then, It'll tighten up so you don't see extra thread exposed. Go ahead and just kind of push that knot off to the side. Grab your needle and we're going to start our right angle weave. To start our right angle weave, you have your thread right next to that knot, and I'm going to take the needle and sew through the first 6 beads after the knot, bringing the needle out after that first 6. So the original loop here is rounded, but it's going to turn into more of a square shape as we work with it, with each side having 6 beads. This original side from the knot end down to the base thread here has 6 beads. I'm going to add 3 more groupings of 6, and each 6 that I add will be 1 more side to my next square. So you can see there's 6, and now I have 2 sides. The original 6 that the thread was coming out of, and then the 6 that I just added. Adding 6 more, that'll be the 3rd side. And then adding my last 6, that'll be the 4th side of my square. To make it sit in a square, my thread and needle are going to go around in a circle, coming out the base of those 6 seed beads. I'm going to go into the top of those 6 seed beads, which is going to be right near that knot that we created. To kind of pull the knot out of the way if you need to, and sew down through those 6 beads. So I have the 6 beads that the thread is coming out of. I added 3 more groups of 6, and then I'm sewing down those original 6 beads. As I pull my thread then, you're going to notice that you have another loop on the design. This again will get more squared off as we work with it. The thread should be coming out now opposite that stop or that knot thread. I'm going to take my needle and thread through 2 more sides, so I'm exiting the top of the 3rd side. So here's 1 side, then I'm going to go through 6 more beads. And if you know right angle weave, that's what we're doing, is we're going through those 6 beads there that are the base of that 2nd square. And then we're going up 6 beads on the side here, which are the right-hand side of that square, and coming out. So you can see that 2nd square kind of starting and finishing. We're going to do another square. So we're coming out the top of those 6 beads that were on the right-hand side. That's now going to be the left-hand side of our next square. On goes 6 seed beads that'll sit at the top of our square. 6 more that will be on the right-hand side of the square, and 6 more that'll be at the bottom of the square. Once I have those 18 additional beads on, my needle is going to go back through the 6 beads that my thread is coming out of on the side of the previous square. Pulling all that thread through, then you have your next loop. To get to the 4th loop, I'm going to sew through the top 6 beads and the right hand 6 beads. I'm turning it in my hand just to make it easier to hold and to sew through. There's my top 6. Give a nice tight yank so you don't see any extra thread exposed. And then I'm going to sew through the 6 beads on the right hand side and out. So at this point here, I have 3 of my groupings or 3 of my squares. What I want to do is make a 4th square, which is going to bring this around into a cube. So you can see the 2 sides there, and then the 3rd one is going to make it 2, or the 4th one is going to make it 2-dimensional. How I'm going to join that together is I'm coming out the right-hand side of the last square that I made at the bottom of those 6 beads. Add 6 more beads onto your needle. And then we're going to take our needle and thread. We're going to bend that first square, and we're going to go into the original 6 beads that were on the left-hand side of the first square. And then up all 6 of those. Once you're out the top of those 6 beads, pull the thread and needle. And that's going to give you 3 sides of your 4th square. To get the top of the square, add 6 more rather, of your Delicas onto your needle. Bring your thread over and sew down through the 6 beads on this right-hand side. And if you need to count, you can kind of count where it's going, count up 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you know exactly where you need to put your needle. Once you have that last side in, you can see it becomes a 3-dimensional or 2-dimensional box there. And then we make it 3-dimensional by setting it up. So you come out with an entire cube, basically, of seed beads having those 4 sides. What I'm going to do now is actually sew through the entire top, which is going to make it a little bit stiffer, and then I'm going to sew through the entire bottom. So I have my thread and needle, and I'm going to sew through all of the bottoms, 6 beads of the box, and then I'm going to switch it around and sew through the top 6 beads of each side of the box. So I'm just basically going around in a circle. And what this is going to do is kind of reinforce it and hold that box together. Once you're done sewing through the 4 at the top, you're just going to run your thread down through one of the sides. And running it down through the side, you're going to come out at one of the bottom areas here. And what we're going to do then is just sew it right around all of the bottom sections here of the box. So we just sewed around the top, making it stand up and a little bit stiffer. And now we're going to sew around the bottom, just like we did the top. So as the box is finished now, what we're actually going to do is we are going to go around and we're going to make little loops basically around the sides that are 10 beads long. Again, if you want to make it tighter, yours are going to be 9 beads long if you are doing the smaller version. What I mean for our loops on the side are that each little section here or each little side of our cube is going to have 10 beads that kind of loop around it. I've put away all my Delica beads because I'm actually done with those. So now it's time just to work with the 15-0s. We're going to pick up 10 15-0s on our needle at a time. 9 if you want to do the smaller version. And once you have 10 on your needle and thread are coming out one row of your sides. Whatever row it's coming out of, that's the row that we're going to go back into from the bottom of the row, coming out the top, making sure that you're going through all 6 of those beads along the row. And that's going to make a loop. So there you can see that silver loop right there near the gold. Each strand again is going to have 2 loops. So I'm going to repeat this. So I've got my 10 beads on. The thread's coming out the top of that side, I'm going to go into the bottom, and the needle is going to come back out the top. Because we're going through each section a fair amount of time, that's why I use Delicas for the center. So then there's 2 little loops on that one little bar. From there, I'm going to take my thread and needle and go through another side. Whether or not I go to the lateral side or perpendicular, doesn't matter. I'm going to go through another set of 6 and do 2 more groupings of 10. So I pick up 2 more groupings of 10. And so back through from the bottom to the top of that grouping of 6. There's my first grouping of 10, and I'm going to do another grouping of 10. So again, from the bottom of that group of 6, back up towards the top. The reason we're making these loops is because this is going to create our bezel for our Rivoli. On one side, all of the loop ends are going to fold in towards one of the little sections. And then as we build the other ones, the other one will fill in to another little cube area. So that's why every one will have 2. One will fold in one way and one will fold to the opposite side. And then that is what creates the sides here of our Rivoli. So you're going to continue on building the sides. So I'm going up another 6 here, coming out, and continuing with those groups of 10. If you get cornered in, that you're getting past the point where you can kind of go to the next one in line and that's finished, start over to another side. Sometimes as you get to the back side, you'll even have to sew through 2 rows. One of these and one of these to get over to one of the edges that's missing its group of 2 on an opposite side. So once you get your 10 on, again, whatever row your thread is coming out of, you're going to go into the bottom of that row and back out the top. After you have 10 on, you do another set of 10. And once you have that other set of 10 on, you're going to go in from the top, through the bottom, and back out to the top of that project. Continue doing that right along all the rows, and you'll get 2 strands between every single row of your Delica. You get 2 strands of 10. So just to show you now, I have that first square on the side of my cube here, that each of those Delica sides have 2 pieces going around with 10 each. Again, if you have the base of 5 and you're doing the smaller version, you have 9 seed beads instead of 10. From here, I'm going to basically move to another angle or another side of the cube, sewing up through 6 of my beads, coming out through the top, and then getting ready again to do my groupings of 10. So now that I'm on this side, I'll kind of concentrate on this side here and continue building so that every single row of Delicas has 2 groups of 10 coming out of it. So I'm to a portion here where I just made 2 loops along the sides, and my next kind of connection points are all finished. So along those 3 lines are all finished. So here was what I was saying was just go through that base line of Delicas right along one side, sewing right through, and then it gets you to another side where you can kind of add beads on. So you can sew into different areas right along that base cube if you need to, if you get to a point where you don't have your next little section kind of open and available. You can see kind of the craziness that's going on, but the effect that it's starting to have, that all 4 loops will curve in to hold the Rivoli as we build those 2 groupings of 10 or 9 around each strand or each side of our cube here. So once you're done adding your groups of 10 or 9, you can see that it kind of looks like a crazy three-dimensional cube with all kinds of strands and stuff coming out of it. The thread and needle are coming out one of my groups of 6. And what I'm going to do is start by putting in my first Rivoli and just work around putting in the Rivolis. To put in the Rivolis, we're going to be using the 15-0 seed beads to kind of trap them in and create a casing. To do so, I'm going to go through one of my groupings of 3, or I'm sorry, one of my groupings of 10, and I'm going to go through there. I'm going to go through 7 of my beads up on one of my groupings of 10 and come out. I'm then going to put on 3 more 15-0s after coming out with 3 remaining beads on the side. I'm going to count over for the next group of 15, next groups of 15. So you can see the ones kind of sitting there right along the center will be my first little bezel. And I'm going to count up from the beads on the side, up my grouping to 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm then going to go through the next 4 beads and bring my needle out. That's going to fold those 2 strands over one another a little bit. Again, 3 more beads go on. And I'm going to go to the next little grouping of 10. Count over 1, 2, 3. And then put my needle through the next 4 beads in line. I'm going to do this one more time and then put my Rivoli in place. So 3 beads go on to make the corner. I go to my next grouping of 10 in my first side of my cube, count over 3 beads. So skip over the first 3, and then I'm going to sew in to the next 4 beads and out. Keeping it open a little bit, add our final 3 here. Count over 1, 2, 3, and then sew through 4 beads. Before pulling really tightly, you can kind of fold those little prongs almost to the side. We're going to put our crystal in. It'll sit right there. And then I'm going to give a nice tight pull. That's going to put the first Rivoli in place. To tighten it up, take your needle and thread around and back through all of those beads that you just added, as well as the groups of 4 that you sewed through, which were in the middle of all of those groupings of 10. This is going to tighten that Rivoli and pull that in even a little bit closer. The process is literally the same with every single cubed area then. To get from one cube to the next and getting ready to add the next Rivoli, after you go through and reinforce the entire side, or the entire center rather, and pull nice and tight, you're going to take your thread and needle through one of the groupings of 4, and then we're going to come down through 3 seed beads on its side. So you're going to come down through 3 that are right there on the side. From there, I'm going to go over to one of my other groupings of 10, going to a new section of my project. I'm going to sew through 7 of my beads and come on out. So all I did was go from one corner to another corner of my rows of 10, sew through 7 beads, and now I'm ready to do my cornering. 3 beads go on, count up 3 beads from the next row, 1, 2, 3, sew through the next 4 in line, which leave 3 empty on the other side, and add those in. Doing this on every corner, so I'm doing it 4 times, And before I pull it really tight and pull that last corner tight, I'm going to drop in my next color of my crystal. If you did the smaller version and you have 9 beads, you're going to skip over 3 beads like we did. And instead of sewing through 4 beads in the middle, you'll just sew through 3. So you'll see a grouping of 3 here right along. And in the corners, instead of doing 3 beads, you'll do 2. This will pull it a lot tighter and make it more rounded in look. So I'm adding 3 beads to every corner, skipping over 3 beads and sewing through 4. If you wanted that more circular look to your pendant or your piece, you're adding 2 beads and sewing into the center 3 beads of every grouping of 10. This bead uses a lot of thread. That's why I had you guys start out with 4 feet of thread. So I'm at my last corner here. I'm going to pick up my 4 beads, and before I pull it nice and tight, I'm going to kind of press it back with my fingers and open it up a little bit. Take my next crystal, pop it in place, and pull the thread. Now I'm going to go around through all of those center beads and reinforce that bezel. That'll tighten it up and secure it right in there. After I secure this Rivoli into the bezel and go the whole way around, what I'm going to do then is just scoot over to one of my other groupings of 10 and add in another crystal. So it's super repetitive because everything that you do, this whole piece, you're doing basically 6 times, 1 on every corner, or 1 on every side rather of the cube. So coming out then through the whole circle, after you're out through one of your groups of 4, after reinforcing the top, I'm going to sew down through a group of the 3 on the side of that group of 4, and then reverse the thread, so I'm coming out through one of my next open sections after the first 7 beads. So now I have my blue and my purple Rivoli in place, and I'm going to continue on adding those corners of 3 or 2, and then sewing through the center 4 beads or 3 beads, and just adding Rivolis the whole way along my little cube. So I'm going, and now I have 5 of my crystals in my all different colors, and I'm going in to put my last crystal in. I have my groupings of 3 beads there on each corner, and I'm going to go ahead and put my crystal into place and give a nice little tight pull, and that's going to finish up my whole little rounded windows of the world. So I'm going to go in now and reinforce all those edges. And the nice thing is I'm right here near my stop bead, or my stop tail basically, or the end tail. I have just enough thread left, and what I'm going to do is circle around here, reinforcing in this last bright kind of flamingo fuchsia Rivoli here, and then afterwards I'm going to make sure that it stops right near the tail. Because I'm going to be putting wire through it, I'm just going to take those 2 tails and tie them together, and then that is going to completely end the project. You won't really see the end of those tails at all then, and they'll be kind of stuck in. So after I have this going the whole way around here, you can see I'm just reinforcing, going through those groups of 4 and through the groups of 3, and then I'm going to come out right near the end thread here, going down through the 3 along the side, and then coming out, taking my needle off my project. Then I'm going to take these thread ends and simply tie them together, right over left and left over right. That knot's going to disappear in the middle then of one of those little kind of triangle sections that sits along the side. So I have the knot tied, and I'm going to go in and take my thread burner, and with the thread burner I'm going to get nice and close to that knot, just leaving a tiny bit left, And then I'll burn down the edges of the thread, so that way the knot that I created has a little bit of stop on each end, kind of flattening out the edges. You can see it's completely kind of hidden then. And then your Windows of the World is completed. You can see kind of the different versions here of all the different colors, whether or not you do it the bigger version or the smaller version here. It completes the bead. So you can go now and do whatever you want with it. What I'm going to continue on with you guys is doing some wire and making some loops to connect it onto the chain that I have here. So I'm going to pick up my chain and pick up my wire and get ready with my round nose, my wire cutters, my flat nose pliers, and then again, I'm going to put some crystals right there on this side of it. So get ready to kind of switch over. You can put all your seed beads away, move your thread burner out of the way, move your needle out of the way, and get ready for a little bit of wire working. So now it's time for our wire working and connecting into our chain. So to connect our Windows of the World beaded bead here, I have my 24 gauge gold filled wire, and I have about 10 to 12 inches of the wire. I'm going to take the wire through the pendant, going in from one corner, kind of wiggling it along so it's in one of the corners, and I'm just going to try a corner until I get one that it goes nicely through, and then poke it through till it comes out one of the other corners. So I want this to sit for me on an actual corner or on that angle. You can go through just a section of the top if you'd rather it hang down, but I like it that it moves around, that you can see all the different colors of the Rivoli. I think that's what makes it kind of the coolest. So once you have it through, I'm going to take my round nose pliers here and make a loop, but on the corners to kind of hold it in place, I'm going to take one of those 4mm fire polished rounds and put it right next to the Rivoli. On the example piece here, I just did my loops right after, so you don't have to put it there. That's kind of up to you. Leaving about 3 inches, 2.5 inches here at the top, I'm going to hold with my round nose pliers and make a loop. If you need help making a coiled eye pin, I've got a bunch of YouTube videos doing that, so check out those videos as well. Once you have your little loop created in your eye pin, I'm going to slide it into my chain, pop the chain in place, and then coil the extra wire right along the base of the wire. The reason I'm using 24 gauge is because those corners around the Delicas from that original little cube are kind of small. Take your wire cutters then and cut off the extra wire. Push that bead and your Windows of the World bead right against the loop and the bead. And then we're going to come to the other side and put a bead on the wire as well. So we have a bead on the wire here, and we're going to get to the other side and make a loop also. So we're going to do a coiled eye pin just like we did on the previous side, making a loop with our round nose pliers. And then I'm going to go into my chain, cutting it to the size that I want, which is about 18 inches. And I'm not going to worry about the back of the chain right now because I'll just cut that in half after I have this connected. I'm going to go into the end of the wire and get the chain onto the wire and then pop that into the loop that I created. Holding then, take that extra wire and wrap it around the loop. If you want to, then the extra wire that I have here on the project, you can use throughout the project to add some links if you want further in your chain. Or what I did here on the original piece, I used a finer chain and then actually made my clasp out of the additional wire. For this one here, I think to get that gold and silver mix, I'll cut the chain in a couple more places and add some more crystals right along the edge. But basically, once you're done with this section and you attach your clasp, your Windows of the World pendant is completed. And whether or not you do it kind of chunkier look with the bigger chain, or you do it with the smaller count or in a bolder color, the nice thing is they look so cool hanging on because they have all those different colors. I really like them with the different colors, and that's kind of that Windows of the World, is you have all kinds of cultures, all different colors of flavors and spices and all kinds of stuff. So that's kind of how I came up with the name for the actual pendant. It reminds me of taking a trip around the world, seeing tons of different colors and landscapes and everything. So anyway, again, if you need any of these materials to do this Windows of the World pendant or beaded bead, you can go back to the beginning of the video to the little drop-down menu and look for the list there for all the different materials and links to get them online. If you would also, you could jot down the note and you can take it to your local Potomac Bead Company store and get the materials there as well. As always, if you want to stay connected with me, see the rest of the videos we do and other examples, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel and you'll get regular updates from us when we put out new videos on designs, on new products, on what's kind of hot and going on in the bead world, and staying connected with Potomac Bead Company. You can also join us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and follow us there, as well as join our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. The Facebook group for beading and jewelry making is an awesome forum that is a lot of designers and people that love to make jewelry, love the design, love the art, and are really helpful and explanatory, helping to answer questions and help pick designs and colors and do techniques as well. So check that out. As always, everybody, thank you so much for watching and have fun making these Windows of the World beads.